Hey guys, welcome to this very special interview with Boris Linares, national champion, UPSL national champion, no less, the founder of New York Renegades, the head coach, and just the beating heart of the club. Boris, when I say national champion, I know you've worked for that for years. How does it make you feel?
Ecstatic, mission accomplished. I think ever since I knew you, I've been telling you that I've been chasing that dream of winning it. Never quit in believing that we could do it. And now the trophy's home, it's right behind us here. So, you know, it's just an honor to finally be able to accomplish it. I just wish my dad was still here to see it. But I know that somehow, somewhere, he's listening or seeing, what we've accomplished. So it was dedicated to him, and to all the players and their hard work and their families' sacrifice.
Yeah, so I mean, you bring up your dad, and you cannot remember Renegades winning the national championship without having Papa Linares at the center of the story, because obviously, to lose a parent is such a tragedy, right? And I know that he was, you've said publicly so many times one inspiration he was for you in the world of soccer, but in the world of your career, encouraging you to aspire, pushing you to become a lawyer, to start your own practice, etc. Um, this was a huge thing for you, but Renegades and yourself, you found a way to get this incredible positive out of what is still, of course, just such a tragic, heartbreaking thing. I guess I think a huge value of this conversation we're having today is for people back home to get inspiration from this. That even in the darkest time, you can achieve something incredible. I guess my first question for you is, um, because he was fighting illness, so this was looming over you even before he passed away. You knew this was coming. How, on a human level, did you cope with one losing, the prospect of losing your beloved father, whilst also everything else in your life, and managing a very high level football club with very high level of ambitions? How did you manage that as a human being?
I mean, it was just like you said. We knew he was battling, and this time was gonna come soon. Even though he battled it to the end. We knew it was coming, me, my sister, my mom. More my sister and my mom who were dealing with him day to day in Florida. I mean, a lot of people don't know. Well, the team does know. And the people around me, I took, I don't know, maybe I would go just about every week in the last 4 months. I would go 2 days a week and just do the trip over there to see my father. But to answer the question about, he taught me and my sister and anybody who would listen to him that hard work requires hard work, and it's just not paying lip service to something. And he would always say, even when I saw him when he was sick, how are you doing? How's the team doing? And are you preparing yourself? Are you properly eating? And I said, maybe I'm overeating now. I don't know, because I'm not getting to the gym or doing any exercise at home. So it became something of a ritual. The first thing he would ask me is how the team is doing, and I would tell him that they're highly motivated. And having a group of guys who a lot of them knew him. Um, you know, they understood, and they told the others who didn't know him to work harder, and to try to, because they loved him, genuinely, felt a connection to him. When we first started this team, he would go, when he was here in New York, go to just about every practice, every game. So he left a lasting impact on those he spoke to and interacted with. So I could not, in my mind and in the guy's mind, we couldn't just, surrender to it. If he was fighting, then why shouldn't we be fighting?
And you talk about fighting, you guys on the field had to go through some incredible battles, you know, including, odd defying wins where you're down to 9 men for 70 minutes, which we'll get into later. But keeping on the subject of your dad, do you feel like, because the team was playing for him, and maybe it also put into perspective just how valuable time is, right? We all at some point will run out of time. It it really, death really puts into perspective, seizing the moment. You have this amazing squad, right? That's come close these last five, 6 seasons, but haven't quite seen over the line. Do you think it almost puts into perspective now? We have to do it now, and that extra inspiration from Papa Linares is. Do you think that translated to some of your most odd-defying victories on the field?
I think so. I mean, the team. We came through trauma. I call it trauma. Is what I told them at the end of, especially the last season, where we got knocked off by Braveheart. Another great team. Our rivals really. And it came down to when I watched that game, in silence and just myself. I watched the game. Um, I just started noting down certain notes that I told them that was going to be the theme for the next season when I did speak to them after, which was going to be capturing the moments. It's just seizing the moments. I thought that was the most important thing, is that we're not focused on, having that killer instinct to end the team, by seizing the moment, and not only seize the moment, create those moments during a game. Um, it became the theme, and I got together and I spoke to, the midfielders, and one particular person who was having a lot of issues with injuries, no fault of his own, Matthews Carriel. I knew that was going to be such an important a part of this equation, because I knew that he, of anybody, can see the field, vision of the whole field, and say, know where to do that pass. And so the whole theme of the season was, we were going to, like you said, seize every moment, because no moment it should be wasted on the pitch. And just like in life, like with my dad, when I spoke to them, it gave us new perspective, like coming off the last season, what happened in that last game. It gave us perspective of, yes, we have to be that team that not only creates the moments but seize upon that moment, with precise passing, going into space, running. And all this doesn't happen just by just blinking. Again, it had to happen with the practices. And, God bless my guys, who I would run plays over and over and over again. And it started to click, especially I knew I had that sort of team. I knew I had the good team. Everybody knew we had a very good team. But I think having that team, especially show itself in this last weekend, where, we became killers. We really like seized every moment that we could, and just capitalized, and translated them into goals. And that's what I've been trying to achieve. That, I guess you can call it like the nirvana of the team, was always the goal we were chasing.
Yeah, you guys definitely peaked at the right time. And I was looking back at some stats, for this season compared to other ones, and obviously stats don't tell the whole story. But for the regular season, it was statistically your worst season. You won 60% of the games, compared to, on average, the last 4 years. I think it was about 88%. I mean, there was one or two seasons where the regular season you were absolutely perfect. You win every single game except for an all decisive playoff. Whereas this time, the regular season, it's still certainly strong, and I know one or two of those games there was tactical rests in there for you with the playoffs coming up. But still, by the incredible standards you guys had set before, it wasn't at that same standard in terms of the stats. But then you hit this peak in the playoffs. You have this incredible run where you had 10 playoff games in a row, well, 8 playoff games in the UPSL plus 2 knockout games of the Open Cup, so 10 in a row in total. You win every single one. Um, what would you attribute to causing everything coming together at the right time where you really needed it most? To, as you said, the nirvana at the end with the national playoff weekend where you keep 2 clean sheets.
Yeah, I mean, what happened was during mid-season, Matthew finally started getting into form. I have to, and some of my key players like Garcia, who early on, our early stumbles came about because we had injuries. Obviously, I wasn't going to report the injuries, but yeah, our early stumbles. I mean, with AFC game, I was. A lot of my players were playing and they were not at full strength, and got them into movement underground. Shout out to them. There's people who do the rehab for us, and started correcting those issues. Our strength and conditioning kept improving. David Lawrence and Oscar Silveria got more involved with the team. He was running my academies, which have been doing excellent. And our stamina started coming up. Our bench was coalescing. Where we could, even if we're having in the midst of a battle in the game, I wasn't afraid to make some changes because I knew that my bench was deep, strong, committed, and able to come in and make a difference in some of those late games, which they did. Eric Turcios coming in. I got very young prospects who I'm slowly building up to become the next gen. But as far as my core players, I told him it's all about timing and it's all about us getting right with the timing. I know Oscar Rivas used to complain, you just keep wanting us to go forward. You want me to turn around and just go forward. And, it gets tiring. Let's try to hold on to the ball like we used to before. And I was like, no, we have to learn to just like, seize the moment because, I look at I study a lot. I study, you know, samples of people who've been successful. I'm talking about like in the premier level, Division 1 level, these kind of levels. You see the way those teams have one thing in common, which is when they attack with numbers, and when they attack with numbers, the probability of success with those numbers go up. So it had to do with a lot of getting to the tempo of the game.
Yeah. So sorry if I could just interrupt you in that point because that's really interesting. So that conversation with Oscar Rivas. So is Oscar there? He's talking almost about transitions. When you guys win the ball back, that maybe a past Renegades team with such an emphasis on possession, Oscar's first instinct would probably be just find a simple pass, right? Maybe give it back to the fullback, centre back, just keep the ball, right? Whereas what you are asking him to do in more recent times is no, we need to do a fast transition turn, right? And pretty much counterattack, right? A totally different and kind of mirroring, yeah, maybe like the death of tiki taka we've seen in the professional level. Is that what you're talking about? The death of tiki taka
Yes.
happening with Renegades too?
Yes, I mean that's what became the focus of our, and some other guys would like, hey, listen, there's got to be positions at the times that we can do. And I was like, yes and no. I need us to get used to our first instinct is to go forward, and the one who really loved that, because it is more what he likes is Matthews Carriel. And so then he became like the ringleader of always like, I'm gonna put this ball here. Like we would have arguments on the field, like, yeah, you need to be here, you need to be here, and I'm gonna make the pass. Don't worry how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get it to you. And like because no one wants to make a run and not receive the ball. So it became something of a laughing where the guys would make fun of me, would like say, hey, joking around, oh, he just wants us to just keep running forward and pass the ball to a ghost or something. And I was like, it's just about if we're all making our runs, our overlaps. And I think we just posted the second goal. We're posting every day the goal, that we're showing breakdowns of how the overlap is coming, where Garcia starts off with the ball, passes it to Matthews. Matthews sees that Sebas is moving into a space where he can receive the ball, and then you have at the same time Garcia's already making his overlap move. You can see it in the corner, moving up, and at the same time now picks up on the other side. Rodri is already picking up that that's the case. He's running into space. Matthew just one touches it to Garcia. Garcia is moving up and Garcia already knows. I just have to put it. Roto is going to make the run. Is going to close it down, and that's what happened. These are the things we were constantly working on is having that difference. Before it would be all right. We're going to hold the ball, like you said. We have our fullback. We have our even our center back can come up, receive the ball. And I was like, no, we're cutting off that part. We're just gonna go. Everything's got to go into high pitch, moving the ball quickly up. It happened during the Empire game where when we gathered ourselves after going down 9, I said, well, we're gonna try to end this in regular time. And the guys knew it. Like we knew how to defend because we had practiced that kind of scenario. And what we wanted, we needed the goal. So it was discussed that we were gonna take away the ball. Junior, who is mostly, a guy who likes to position himself, he said he was ready to run and we were going to run. And then when Milton Campos got the ball, he saw a little space and just decided I'm going to take it right down the middle. Matthew's already making his run in case he has to throw it here. But the goal was to get the ball over to Junior so that he can bury the goal, put himself in that position. So again, it all goes down to like just the practice of getting something done in that form. And it is possible even with a semi-pro team. If you go to practice, these things can work.
Absolutely, it was definitely. I feel like this was the most pragmatic Renegades. You still had the quality and the exciting football that everyone knows you for, but as you said earlier, that sort of killer instinct you guys had was there stronger defensively and definitely in attack as well. Talking about the Empire 9 men win, right? Which I think in 5 years of running Game of Frame, I think that was the most insane thing we've ever seen. I couldn't watch the whole game, so I tuned in 70 minutes in, and I saw the scoreboard said 1-0 Renegades, and you're down to 9 men. And I was, and then I looked to when you got the 9 men roughly, and I honestly thought it was so impossible. I almost texted my cameraman and said, "Hey, I think you might have accidentally put 2 red cards." I just couldn't conceive when I saw that you were down to 9 men for so long. How's it possible? And especially given, Empire it was their strongest season. They drew against you guys earlier in the season. Obviously, I know Empire really weren't happy with how they played against you in the playoff, but overall, they were really a force to be reckoned with. They drew against you guys. I think they either drew against Braveheart in regular season or they lost. But they're a force to be reckoned with. This was on that day a very good team. Um, when you're facing the 9 men of Empire, was that, do you think, the moment where you had the biggest doubts that that the national dream was probably beyond your reach? Or did you, when you got those 2 red cards after about 23 minutes, did you still really, was there belief, or you're like, this is a long shot, this is going to be a miracle?
Well, at first I was just mad because the card was, especially I can see the card being given to little Nico. I could see that. I was okay. Like, listen, he shouldn't have gone in for that challenge having already a yellow. So, and that's just being young and not thinking about how to play with one card. But these are things he has to learn to do, which I'm pretty sure he's young, so he'll be able to. Now it will play in his head. But what I was mostly mad about was when they gave Ruiz the red and the refs. I'm telling you, that was a terrible thing to do because the fourth ref went to tell him, and I was hearing him, why are you saying he punched him when he didn't punch him? What are you talking about? And then the replays, and I sent it to the league, and the league was actually saying, you're right, but we can't interpret whether he was trying to, but it was just he grabbed here, like on the back of the neck, and it was no punch. And the whole instinct to throw a punch, because I then they said it should have been to the discretion of the ref, saying, well, I'll give him a yellow for that. Instead, he gives him a straight red. Which got me in a sense mad, because I think the ref was just listening to their bench going crazy. I sent it to the league, and they took away the red card. Um, no, he never punched him. He never went in to hit him. I have the footage. I have everything. But anyway, I was really, really upset about that. And then I think my sister in law, who's one of the coaches, is administrator, and she helps me a lot. Because my wife was like, lost. And then the other coaches, I'm just hearing noise. They're all screaming about the injustice of what just happened. And, she comes and taps me in the shoulder and says, hey, you need to calm down and you need to think your way out of this. That's when I snapped out of it. And I was like, okay, okay. And then I saw at the corner of my eye, I saw Big 12 was praying in the middle of the field. And I see Matthew was like, no, no, we can play. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to play. What? I snapped out of it. I said, it's hard. I knew that. I pulled the guys together. And Cáceres, being the leader he is, we can win this game. Tila, Toldo, all the guys, the core, we all got gathered around and said, no, this is doable, because me being crazy, I have prepared you for this kind of scenario. And I told them right now, we need to catch a moment. I told them we just got to catch a moment. We'll steal the ball, find a way to get a quick turnover, and go on the offensive. Everybody knew that the idea was we're gonna, hold, properly. I won't go into tactically how I did it, let them figure that out. But we're gonna hold, take the turnover, and when we get the turnover, we're going to go for that goal. I think that's what surprised them the most, is we actually went for the goal, which is something I probably wouldn't have done without that experience of years now of coaching. But nowadays, it's just like we said no. We had a resolve about ourselves, about we can win this game. Um, it's just a matter of taking the game to them and getting that goal.
It was an incredible moment, incredible story. Certainly, it's fascinating to hear how you, as a team and yourself, you broke it down into a challenge that I guess felt manageable, even though it was still obviously just it was an insane challenge really to have to face. So when we talk about your playoff run, I think we have to just acknowledge uh, the past seasons, the disappointments, right? Where you guys have made the national playoffs multiple years, and probably the last, really since fall 2023, you guys had a good enough team on paper to win the national championship, probably alongside 6 or 7 other teams every year. It's probably that number that you could say they could win it. Um, the playoffs are very tough, as you know. You have one bit of bad luck, or a bad performance. That's it, and you guys got knocked out a few times from late goals. You pretty much had this, the same core squad through all those years. So I'm curious, because amateur football is not, and semi-pro football, it's not like professional football. You're really relying on buy-in from your players. They're not relying on you for a living, right? You have to inspire them with that. You know what you're doing, and with a vision. So,
Mm-hmm.
how after this summer, when you guys lose to Braveheart, which you guys always know is a cup final, because Braveheart is one of the top teams nationally as well. And it's kind of a shame you guys are in the same division, because it's always one of both of you could go all the way every year, honestly. But on paper, it was the furthest away you had been from making the national championship in 4 seasons. You didn't even make the nationals. How do you pick yourself up? How do you pick your squad up, who have once again not made it for a fourth, fifth time, and convince them we can do this, guys. Don't quit. Keep going. What is that conversation like? Is it one conversation or is it over time? Do you talk to them right after the game, or do you have to wait a few weeks for everyone to settle down?
We talked after the game, after the loss, and it wasn't because of a lie. I even took some of the blame myself. The game planning and the preparation. You know, we lost, and it wasn't for lack of effort on our part. They just flat out beat us. With that late goal. Credit to them. They were hungry. They were hungry, and I always known them to be a hungry team. Every time you've seen those awards, and that's why I always call them my rival because I've learned over it's just one of those games who are always one, they're not afraid. I mean, I've seen teams. I won't name them, but I've seen teams get afraid of us. And maybe that's right, maybe it's wrong. Maybe I'm using the wrong term, but I think the level of respect is just different. But when it comes to them, I know that they're not. They don't want to hear it. They're coming, and the will to win is genuine with Braveheart. Um, but I said what I said at the end of that game. And then, like I told you, I took my time. I was watching the games and the clips, and I said something's missing from this team. And it became. I started reading other coaches, what they have said and what had they done and implemented. And one of the things that dawned on me was I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I have to start listening to how they get it done, and how they get it done is, whatever form you're going to take, you have to seize the moments. And I then, we had a meeting again. We had like I think a dinner that we put together and we really discussed it, with the core members of the team of, we want it. Yeah, and it was never a matter of having to convince them to want it again because they want it. And I knew they're warriors in this game and they want it. And, it came down to, listen, I think what's missing is this two things. I said, the first one, we have to have that extra grit where we make them pay if they hold on to that ball. We have to, if they're going to score on us, they have to really work to score. That was number one. Increase the defensive intensity of our defense, not just concede a goal to concede a goal. And the second part was again the working of the shift with the midfield instead of just necessarily holding on to the ball. The whole point is now we're going to shift into high level, high octane, just go for the gut, go for the goal, and get our timing right. And that took a while. It just doesn't happen in one game. We opened up our training camp a little earlier than most teams. We always tend to do that, and we also we were switching that philosophy into that where anybody is gonna whoever holds the ball in the middle if the other team is holding it, our intensity has to pick up because that's why we have the bench that we have, right? Is we're gonna use them. They're gonna come in. So if you're already, let's say Milton Campos is already done, like he can't run anymore, then I can put in Kinmar Campos, who's just gonna come in and do the work. So it just becomes something where I was able to do that all season, even in the U.S. Open Cup game. I think the one in the U.S. Open Cup game where we conceded the most goals was to Lansdowne. And that game was a back and forth game. But, we're able to hang with any team like that because I think we have a deeper bench who can come in, they'll throw a punch at us and we would go down, they would get a goal, we come right back. And I knew that in time we were going to just, it was a game of attrition and we were going to be able to, still bring it to them and still go up on them, which thankfully happened, but those are the games that define you, right? So we've been through so many games. Like I said, it wasn't our time before in the other years past. This Renegades team is just different because in the way it's like we've been through the battles, we've been scarred, we've been through trauma. We know, the agony of losing when you're so close to going and achieving something. And to us, it became about, you know, beating us beating us in these games that really matter. I don't know. You have to play a totally different level of football. Miami, good team, but I think they just did not understand us. They suffered the most over there in the semi about what we had already devised our way of playing, and they got hit hard with the three counters.
So obviously, when we get to the playoffs, you had this crazy period between the end of October to December, where you have six UPSL playoff games and two Open Cup games, and obviously you end up making the Open Cup, and we'll talk about that later. But eight knockout games back to back, incredibly intense footballing wise. Obviously, your dad tragically passes away in that time as well. Uh, is that period just like a blur to you, and you can just remember sort of the highlights, the big games, or do you just remember every moment still? And what were the feelings of that period like?
I mean, I remember all the games, and unfortunately, I also remember the situation I was living with my dad. But the players, the support that I got from my players, and was amazing in the sense that they understood, and some of them had already tragically lost their parents. Uh, they were younger, and having lost their parents even younger than I am, really, I have to say that I'm blessed in that sense that um, I've had my father for a long time, and they had already gone through this tragedy. When it comes to losing a parent, you can never really get fully ready. But had a lot of players who understood where I was coming from. Rosero, Rodrigo, they had lost their fathers while they were young, and they helped me cope with what was coming, and then I actually losing my father. The team rallied, the team rallied behind me. Everybody, my coaching staff rallied behind me. My wife, my kids, all the coaches, all the administrators involved in this whole project called Renegades came together and, were supportive at all times of helping me cope with it. So, thankfully, we were able to train. The guys trained. I might not have been there for all the training sessions. I would go over some stuff and send it over to my coaches and shout out to them who, implemented it with them. I would go, I would call in during the practice and say, hey guys, this is going on. This is what you get. And they were like, no, we're going to work. The good thing is like when you have a team who had a culture of we're going to work, and, and shout out to them. And a lot of people don't know. They call them prima donnas and all that stuff. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know what it's like to go to a practice, a high intensity practice, come out of there. We're done 11:45 at night, and then have to wake up the next morning to go work. That's not. A lot of these people they need to understand. What these players sacrifice and put towards it. So they don't know.
Yeah, so good. I mean, that's a really good point because I think it's the same when sometimes we look at our professional idols. Someone like Messi, we look at and we think it's talent. How can you be that good in talent? Obviously, there is talent involved with being good at anything, but really the heart of it is being able to grind consistently, isn't it? And sometimes when you're grinding and training, you're making progress, and sometimes you're not, and it's really frustrating. But you just have to keep pushing, and that I mean I think like Junior Rosero, for example. Everyone, when they think of him, they think this just a superb talent, someone who's got a golden strike, right, golden boot. but you see it firsthand, and I, I get a sense with Junior that he is just out all the time practicing, and he is willing to get down and dirty in the details, and that when he does the extraordinary in the field and knuckleballs it in from 40 yards out, that is because he's been willing to smash a ball probably over a crossbar so many times, time and time again, to get there. Is that a huge secret behind all of your players, that they're not just talents, but they're really willing to dig deep in training, and do it when it's hard, and when they're losing and when they're winning, they're willing to do that.
I mean, absolutely, because every player that I have on my roster, up and down that roster, are people who grind, who work. Everybody else who hasn't in the past, who I have let go, or we parted ways because they just wouldn't do what was necessary. They're not here no more. It's just that simple. And nothing personal against them. I get it. Like it's not for everybody, and they're not willing to or able to. Let's just put it that way, or able to do it. For whatever reason, family, work. It all becomes a matter of it. But getting back to the way the work ethic of each player. I mean, a lot of these players, apart from working with me, would go and practice on their own, and do what they needed to do, whether it would be stamina, working on their, on whatever weaknesses they had, because we would tell them, this is your weakness. And you pointed out with Rosero, I told him at the beginning of the season, a part of what I need this season to be about is we're going to learn, just like you're adapting to us, we have to adapt to you. And I told him, I promise you, we are going to adapt to you, and you will receive the balls where you need them to be so that you can take your shots and do what you do best. And that took some time, to do. I'm not gonna lie. He had in the beginning a very frustrating season, but as it progressed, it started to click. That's what happens when you have practices, when you have games. The guys never stopped believing in him, and I certainly never stopped believing in him. So I knew that eventually it was going to click, and it did. That was the most important part of it.
He proved again what a big game player he is as well. With the He didn't score the same quantity of goals this season as he did previous ones, which is, I think, partly because the competition's got better. But when he did score, it was often a pivotal moment, such as the winner against Empire, and he wasn't getting six chances in the game; he was getting one or two. He was converting it when you guys needed it, which I think that was a huge part. So you guys get to the national playoffs, and we spoke about this I think a few weeks ago, where you have as a New York team a difficult part where you have the gap. You finish you've had your quarterfinals in December. You're then pretty much waiting for a month and a half. Meanwhile, the West Coast teams, obviously, who can have fixtures in January without worry about it being rescheduled due to weather, they're coming in with momentum. Your guys have a lot of time to look forward to the playoffs, but they also have a lot of time to wonder: are we going to choke again? This is the furthest we've gotten. We want this so bad. Can we get this over the finish line? How do you manage your squad mentally, going into that big weekend, so that they're approaching it positively and not with nerves? And how did you relight the fire after that long break?
The good news is, we go back to the roots. A lot of those trophies are behind me, from playing in the underground tournaments. And I said, what better place to, keep ourselves sharp, and everybody's coming for us, they want to win against us, than going and joining those tournaments. We joined, we won more than I think we did lose the one with morning footy, which was a great one because it was against pros, who are off season now playing. and we made it to the finals against them. It was a very memorable one. But yeah, they kept us going. Our hunger and motivation kept us going. Plus, we were practicing. Shout out to all the facilities who knew the situation we were in, and they opened the doors to us where others would have said no. A lot of these, the support that we were receiving through whether the Long Island Bubble, the Sousa, Coleman, these guys was like, no, here, we're gonna give you. It was late at night, when they because they still have to run a business, but they gave us the bigger bubbles that they have to use so that we can get as close as possible to 11v11 scenario. Um, and believe it or not, we got training. Although it's not the same as being outside, it did help us that we were able to train in bigger facilities. But the other thing, we kept our touches going, and we used the time to really, um, fine tune our abilities to like find each other, scan the field correctly, correct a lot of the things, film review of what each individual player was doing. So it allowed us to do that where we fine tuned ourselves, and it showed. It really did show when we reached over there. I think everybody was expecting us to come out flat, and uh, you know we were truly to the contrary of that. I was even shocked at the way we were moving the ball so precisely, and it feels good when you see your team actually doing what we practice and put together on a real game out there, and showing the precise passing that we were doing. The whole nine was just like showing the level that they were actually putting through. Our team was like showing this kind of level, was showing that kind of precision. It felt good watching them play. Actually,
When you guys crossed the finish line after a really impressive weekend where you scored five between the semi-finals and the final, kept a clean sheet in both games, which great defenses win championships. The old cliche, you guys proved it. When the full-time whistle went in the final, one of the lasting images for me is the look of emotion on your face, in that sort of 30 seconds, minute after, just that rush. And I'm sure any year you would have had that sort of a big rush of emotion because you've been chasing a national championship, which is a massive achievement for years. Obviously, in the context of your father passing away too, it just added so much more meaning. What was going through your head in that first minute after the full time whistle went?
and disbelief, a relief and disbelief at the same time, because it's been the culmination of constant working, long nights. I'm a lawyer by day, yeah. So I hang up that cape to put on a different cape on at night. The sacrifice, and it all came to a head, and the crescendo of feelings of just absolute relief. Had my mother and my sister who flew down to support us from Florida. Very important to me, and I knew, I felt like we were all on the mission to accomplish it and finally to achieve it. Where it goes back to where everybody would say you're crazy when I first started this, and then I would say I'm gonna go for the nationals. I'm gonna win the nationals, and
Just to
it's
go on to
just
that point, I mean, when people say you're crazy, everyone has to remember you founded this team in 2019, so 7 years ago, and you entered the UPSL in the fall of 2022, I believe. So, it is an extraordinary achievement in that you can forgive people for saying that you're crazy. Um, it's an extraordinary achievement, isn't it? That in 4 years you've managed to achieve this massive dream with hundreds of clubs all trying to do the same thing.
yeah. I mean, it goes into one, a belief in New York and the players here. That was number one. Number two, it was about convincing the guys that I was the right guy to put this together. 'Cause believe me, a lot of people were looking at me. Not anymore, obviously, not anymore. No one ever. And I think the doubt started going away. A year and a half ago, I would say that people started saying, he's serious and his team is serious. But in the beginning, I had a lot of people like, "What was this guy's crazy?" I would just openly say it to anybody who would listen to me, like, "Yeah, I'm going to put together a team that's going to win the national." Building on people like Contour who went out there and did it. And I'm like, and he did it with also local New York. And then everybody told, oh, the game has changed. Once Texas and Florida came into this heavy and California was always winning them. I was like, no, you're crazy. The football out there is just superior. And I was like, nah, I would go. I went to Florida repeatedly, and I have a lot of good friends out there, who I saw, and I saw the level, and I said, no, I don't think. I think, properly trained and motivated team can go out here and actually compete and beat these guys. And the same with Cali. I was like, I know Cali has won the most, but I was like, no, there's no reason why a New York team can't do it. And I set out to do that, and finally, when you talk about that last whistle, all of those things just go right through you. And then, but then it was just about my dad. That sorry that he missed it because he was my biggest supporter. Believe me, no one else believed like, oh, is he serious? My father's like, go for it. Like he was like all gung ho about it, and you can do this. It doesn't matter. But having him not being there, but at the same time we felt his presence, so I feel more relief now. But yeah, but then it was just all the emotions came out at that moment when it came down to it, when we finally realized the dream.
And you guys were playing in the custom jerseys with Papa Linares, literally on the shirt as well. It's when you look back at in 10 years at this, I guess this season, that this sort of 6 month period starting in August, um, coming to now. Um, Obviously, I'm sure it's going to be with a lot of mixed emotions, isn't it? Because you're going to remember probably one of the best moments in your life, winning a UPSL National Championship, but also you're going to remember this was one of the worst moments in your life as well, because you lost your beloved father. So how do you think you will think about this um, in 10 years? And if your boys are having kids of their own, you've got grandkids, how will you tell them about this 6 month period?
Thankfully, through sources like yourself, it's going to be documented and forever etched. It won't be just about, oh, grandpa telling stories now. Everything in this day and age, thankfully, it's pretty much recorded. The interview I did at the end tells it all. At the end, and having an interview with you and other interviews that people are planning on doing. It's just going to be all there for them to be able to see it for themselves. But for me, and that is, it's just not all about just me. It's about my team. Um, you know, for them believing in me and believing in the system, and the one thing I can tell you that I think I have changed is the culture here was like always. I think that's what New York had wrong. When going back to it, is this culture that you don't have to, like, you can just rely on talented players, get them from here, mix them all together and shake it up and put it out there, and you get the result. Doesn't work that way, man. You have to work. I've always said it that you have to work, and I think quietly the other teams, the big teams I'm talking about, are looking at it and are saying, you know, I think they started doing practices. So, um, yeah, a lot of teams don't come correct. They don't practice, and I think, part of it, and I don't understand that culture, to be honest with you, because if pros train the level that they do, how the hell are you going to think you're going to achieve success at a national level if you're not training, you're not working? So it's a testament to the guys who, each member is was vital. Even some of the guys who I didn't play. And I had two guys who took the trip and didn't get to play, and they deserve it. They deserve that thing. It's just at the moment, that's what part of coaching is, right? You have to go with not only your gut, the experience of the player, and knowing that this player is going to do this. And I know that from their perspective, they're like, we're prepared to do that too. And you know what? They'll have their shot. That's what I tell them. Whoever goes in with my full confidence and the expectation that they're going to perform as a renegade. That's the way I look at it. That's what I tell them.
Lastly, beyond the UPSL National Championship is obviously a huge highlight. You guys have the Open Cup to look forward to. Once again, you've made it for a consecutive year. Last year, you played Columbus Crew 2. Lost 4-1. I mean, it really was around the half time, right before half time, wasn't it, where you got killed because you kept it at 0-0, and then conceded 44th and fourth, and then in 3 minutes stoppage time in the second half, and that was really the kicker goal that second. But still an amazing experience. You played at Columbus Crew Stadium. Now you're gonna be a bit more local, playing Westchester Soccer Club. What lessons are you going to be taking from the experience last year of playing against a professional team? And how are you feeling about your prospects of playing the local USL One team?
Yeah, you know what? My father always used to say, and I know a lot of great thinkers say it too. You learn more from your defeats than you do in victory. And that defeat taught me a lot. Taught me one, you just don't let up. You play to that final whistle, and I think the team, more importantly, learned that lesson. Um, we didn't have Oscar Rivas for that tournament, and we didn't have Rodrigo at 100%. Sometimes injuries play a part, but what we did definitely learn from that experience, which helped us throughout the whole season, was you know I talked to you about moments, and the moments became very critical in that game because they only reached to get to those goals that they got in the first half. The two goals was just the two times they got to us, and they took advantage of the moments, and we didn't. You know, and we had more chances on them if you analyze that game, but we didn't capitalize, and they did. So I took a lot out of that game, and knowing how quickly they did the transition to get those two goals. It was just, they delivered in a very, well oiled machine that I said, this is what I dream of having the Renegades become. So, having said that, that experience of going out there, learning that, hey, you can play with professionals, you can play against professional team. We're gonna bring that same grit and that same thing that we have learned throughout this whole season into this game, and also knowing that we have to. You're playing against a professional team, so the professional side, they already know they're going to play to the final whistle, and they're going to look for their moments. And we have to expect those moments to come, and we have to defend against those moments, and we have to take and execute on our moments in a ruthless way. It's just football. It's just the way it is. I think we showed it throughout the UPSL and the US Open Cup that we were ruthless in our moments. We stuck the daggers right into our opponents, and that's what it's all about, and that's what we have to. We're going to try to bring that same theory of play right to them and see what happens. And I really can't prepare for that team because I don't know what to expect out of them because it's a different team this year, this season. That's what I'm hearing with the new head coach and everything. So, but we're just gonna do, we're gonna be at a disadvantage where we should be at an advantage of knowing how they play in this game. But they're gonna have way more footage of us and how we play, and it should be a very interesting and good game. But you know what? We're there to give them a game. We're still supposed to be the underdogs, but you know what? This is football, and that's the beautiful thing about it, right? It's where you have to still play the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys win that, it would just complete just an incredible 6 months. It's going to be incredible anyway with having won the National Open Cup, the National UPSL, excuse me, title. But if you add beating a professional team as well to that, it's gonna be a really incredible event. And for anyone who's interested in coming to watch that game live, can find all the. It's gonna be local. You can. It's going to be on the evening of the 19th of March. I forgot the exact name of the school it's at. Where what field is it at, Boris, in Westchester?
You got me now at this. I just had it in my head and I forgot, but it is a school. It's locals up there in Westchester.
Yeah,
It's their home field, and the tickets. I think they're already on sale already. I think that they've already put them on sale. And I know they've been preparing for this game, and it should be a very good game. I mean, I love competition. I love good games, and we're not gonna hold off on playing our game. We're gonna play our game, and see what happens. But as far as we're concerned, we're gonna treat it as just another game that we want to win. As we've been on do or die games. Already the whole
yeah.
run so far is nothing
Knockout
new.
game number 11th in a row.
Yeah, I mean it's nothing new to us now. Mentally we're very driven, and this team is very driven, and it's become one of our highlights is like try to beat us. You're gonna have to play all 90 minutes, because you're not just gonna get a victory out of us. You're just not. It's just and that's not a conceit. That's just we know what we're capable of. We know that if you score first, we can come back. If we're scoring on you, we're not gonna let up. It's just that simple. And our defense is totally underrated. I thought that a lot of teams just didn't understand how we defend now. It's uh it's a different Renegade team than 2 years back, and 2 seasons back. It's a different team. It's like you're gonna feel us.
Yeah,
And the same thing happened to Provo. I think they were the highest scoring team in the UPSL, and we shut them down. It was just there's no spaces that we try to leave out there. We're not trying to leave anybody's spaces. So, the guys get back to work next week. I gave them 2 weeks off, and next week that's it. They're already gone through 1 week, and 2 weeks back. We're just gonna hit next week. We start again.
well, I just looked it up, and it's going to be so. It will be March the 19th. It's going to be 7:30 p.m. kickoff at Mount Vernon Memorial Field. They've got a nice stadium up there. Should be a great event. If you are local, I would definitely recommend coming out to watch that. Whoever you support, or if you're just a neutral, I certainly hope to be there. But Boris, firstly, congratulations again
Thank you.
on being a national champion. It's a really inspiring story how you guys did it this year, and the best possible tribute to your father. I mean, it's really. I think everyone listening to this can take a lot of inspiration from how you personally and how your squad handled tragedy and turned it into this unbelievable fire to achieve a national championship. And looking forward to seeing what is next for the club. But really appreciate all your time, Boris.
I mean, thank you. And we're looking forward to another great season defending it. And I know that everybody in New York. I had to say this too before we sign off. everybody here was supportive. I have to say that, once we left New York, I know here everybody's like, like rivals and everything, which is great for the sport and has done a lot of great things for the sport locally. My whole thing was to put New York on the map, and I think everybody's paying attention to not only New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. The level of play has increased. And believe me, everybody, I want to just take this time and thank everybody. All my rivals here, whether it's Lansdowne, the Greek Americans, Zoom, on the other side of the different league, but they become rivals, I guess, because we always meet in the Open Cup. And then there is, on my side here, obviously Braveheart and all Empire and the other teams that compete here in the Jersey Alliance. They've all been gracious. Osner, everybody. I'm sure I missed some, but everybody's been very great, supportive. Once we left the Northeast region, I think it started the support, the level of support started going up when we hit Chicago. Um, we gave them something they were not expecting, and that's what we like to do. That's what Renegades do. A lot of people just say, "Oh, you guys came out of nothing," and I'm like, "No, people who have been following me know, and New York knows, and we look forward to another great season. It should be very, very, very tense with the bullseye, as you and I have always discussed. I have it, but you know what? The guys will cash the checks. They'll meet that expectation and more.
Yeah, all those teams cheering you on, maybe they were half cheering you on because they're now all going to get the opportunity to maybe say if they have a good day in the office, we beat the national champions when you play you guys in spring. So, the bullseye is going to be very, very big because in the UPSL now you are the team to beat. There's no one. You're not just the team to beat in the Northeast. You're the team to beat nationally.
Yeah, I know. It's great. It's great feeling that way, and hopefully, everybody has a great season. All the teams, all boats rise. I mean, yeah, I can only be forged out of the Northeast in New York. So, the New York State of grind, that's what happened. So, shout out to all the fans who support us and those who, even the haters, I love you all too, because if you're not talking about us and, it doesn't, it means that somehow we're still on your mind or whatever, but it's fine. I love it. So, it keeps us on our toes, keeps me on my toes, and always blessed to be learning. Gotta thank God also for it. Without Him, I wouldn't be here and doing all these things if it wasn't for that. So, I always feel blessed, and the team is blessed, and the guys are a great group of guys that we have here. I can't complain about anything. We're gonna go for more. That's what we're gonna do.
We're counting on it. Well, Boris, thanks again for your time,
Thank you.
and congratulations and good luck in the Open Cup.